best prospect you ever saw that didn't really make it? And whose career surprised you most? Somebody you didn't look like much of a prospect but turned out to be a really good player.
Okay. Well, Rick Reichhardt from the University of Wisconsin was a great athlete. He played in the Rose Bowl as an end in football, and had great power, running speed, everything you'd want in a player. The one thing he lacked, he didn't have a real good throwing arm. And everybody in baseball attended a doubleheader there in Madison one Saturday, and he hit a home run in each of the 3 fields. He also stole home. He had a double. I mean, it was, and Stan Musial was there representing the St. Louis Cardinals. Billy Martin was with the Twins at the time. He was there. So not only scouts, but front office people. And I had brought Gene Autry, our owner, and Bob Reynolds, the president of the Angels, because I'm impersonating, I'm begging for them to come with me to see this guy, because I knew that we hadn't been spending much money on high school and college players, and I figured, look, if we don't start spending it, then I can't provide you with the players you want. So I loosened them up to come, and then after the trip, the doubleheader, John Quinn, my father-in-law, was with the Phillies at the time, and he invited Gene to come in to have a drink before they left, and we were driving back to the airport in Chicago to get him back to California. And Gene Autry says to me, you know, John Quinn, I have a lot of respect for him. And he says, you know, you never can tell how they'll do in pro ball. I said, Gene, the reason he's telling you that, because he wants them. So I was trying to teach Gene to be a baseball man and don't fall for those false statements. And anyway, we went out. We broke the barrier of what not spending, gave him $205,000. And I was getting heat about damaging the negotiations with high school and college players because we had gone to that situation. They got to the big leagues in a hurry, and he had 17 home runs by All-Star game, his first full spring training in Major League club. And he said, Roland, I've got some splitting headaches. I don't know what's wrong with me. So I had him examined, and he had a kidney problem. They had to remove a kidney. And I think that took something out of him, the brute strength or what have you. Some medical people would probably tell me, yes, that was a terrible handicap. So he leveled off and didn't have the career that we all thought he would have. A pitcher, Juan Pizarro. I love Juan Pizarro. He was at a minor league training camp, and blazing quick arm. But he was on the wrong team. We had Spahn, Buell, Burdette, and in those days you'd have an off day and they'd skip Pizarro and go back to Spahn, Buell, and Burdette. So by the end of May, we were 6 games in front. And Pizarro begged to be sent out to the AAA club. He loved the manager there. Ben Garrity was a great manager. And he said, I'd rather go with Uncle Ben than staying here and not pitching. And then when we were going to bring him up, he says, I don't want to come up. I'm having more fun down here. He strike out 15 or whatever. He ended up, the new regime came in and they traded him to the White Sox. And he had some good years with the White Sox. But he looked like a can't-miss guy, and rightly so.
Richie Allen?
Richie Allen, that's a good name. He wanted to be changed to Dick Allen when he joined us. He had been in Philadelphia. He was putting some big numbers, but he wasn't popular. And he had some mishandling, as I saw, because they'd sent him to Little Rock and AA when they had all those riots in that particular year. So there was no sympathy shown, I think, by the Phillies as to how to treat Dick. So when he joined us, we were at the baseball meetings, and Al Campanis, the general manager of the Dodgers, he had him for 1 year. The Cardinals had him for 1 year, but he was now property of the the Dodgers. And I run over to Chuck Tanner. I say, hey, Chuck, would you like Dick Allen? Oh, Roland. He's the most positive guy I know. He says, Chuck is. He said, yeah, by all means. I know his mother. She's a great lady. I know his brothers. They live only 8 miles from Newcastle to Wampum, Pennsylvania. And we pulled the trigger. And Stu Holcomb was there, but he sent our publicity director out that morning, figuring we're not doing anything. And then all of a sudden we get this deal to announce. And I might not go in complete detail for you because I don't like to put a knock on somebody, but Dick Allen carried the club. I mean, it was tremendous how he joined us and some of the things that he could do. He helped Rich Gossage, our young pitcher, he'd tell him how to pitch to the strong hitters in the league, the sluggers. And Goose loved them. We had a young player, George Orta, playing second base that I had seen play in the low leagues of Mexico the year before, and all of a sudden he's playing second base in the big league. He'd say, George, I'll play a little closer to you and have so much ground to have to worry about. So for us, I mean, I often say he helped save the franchise because we hadn't been drawing well, and then he put on some tremendous moments. We had a game early where there was the first year of the designated hitter rule, and Dick had said, I don't like that rule. The player should be able to play a position as well, not just be a DH. So he never wanted the DH, and the first time we had an off day, Chuck, we won a big game, and then the next day, didn't have Dick in the lineup. And I went downstairs and I said, Chuck, what happened? He says, I told the writers. What'd you tell the writers? What'd you tell the owner? That I'd rather use him at the right spot. Pretty good. Well, but still, I said, he's going to give up 80 at-bats or some 90 at-bats during the season? He said, well, we'll see what happens. I said, Chuck, you're real strong. You can push him out there. He says, yeah, but he's stronger than me. And Chuck was real strong. And so the game, we had a big crowd. We won the first game, doubleheader. Second game, now Dick is not in the lineup. And that's when we had this discussion. And we're trying to get a rally going in the ninth inning. Walt Williams got a base hit. Mike Andrews got a base hit. And they were trying to rush Allen, who was in the clubhouse, to put on his uniform. And Chuck put a pinch runner for Andrews, and Sparky Lau came in to relieve, and he was the top closer at that time for the Yankees. And Andrews going across says, hey, you're in deep trouble now, aren't you, Sparky? He said, I know it. And Allen came out with 3 or 4 bats. And about the second pitch, he had a screaming line drive, home run in the left center field seats, and we win. So he's jubilant. So it bought time with Chuck that used him for the right spot. I said, Chuck, I love you, but you can be a con man too. I said, but I admire your courage, and it worked out. So, and Allen, I mean, tremendous athlete. He brute strength, could run the bases with anybody, good quick turns around the bases. He'd score from from first on a double. He had 2 home runs in Minnesota, inside the park home runs, where he just crushed the ball, and Bobby Darwin in center field, it was acting like a knuckleball, and he missed both of them. And Allen ran 2 home runs that nobody else I've heard has had 2 inside the park home runs and 1 ball game in 1 inning. No, 1 ball game, sorry.
Roland, you spent some fair amount of time today looking at the memorabilia in this place. What was your favorite or most surprising piece of memorabilia? What sparked the most interesting or surprising memory for you?
What was it now?
The memorabilia in here. What sparked the most interesting memory for you today?
Well, I'm overwhelmed by it. I can't resist the temptations of making the tour again and again, because I see balls that have been signed by certain players that we had, and I love Cooperstown, but I think your delivery here it's just beyond description. I can't wait to tell our president of the club, Derek Hall, that he should make a stop here, because we may try to emulate you, but we'll never come close to have what you have here. And I'm stuttering a little bit because there's so many flashbacks of the different names or different pictures. I was there or knew about it, played a role in my life and my family's life and everything that I won't leave. I'd like to cancel my flight tomorrow and stick around here for another week. And I'll try to describe it to others, and I'm going to have difficulty to.
But it's amazing, if I can interject, that I walk around Raleigh this morning, showing him around how he was so involved and was a part of so many players. And in the actual, talk about a piece, I'm showing him Hank Aaron's rookie contract. he looks at me and goes, "Oh yeah, I'm the one that drafted that." You know, it's like, so he's intimately involved with so many pieces, and then it just,
Almost, yeah, I'd say 75% of the exhibits, some way, somehow, have been involved. So you have good people carry you, so that's why you're fortunate to be somewhat successful, because others make you better than you are. And Bill Veck used to say, be serious about your job, but don't take yourself seriously. So I certainly don't, because I could kneel and genuflect and thank at different parts of this to so many people. And I could cry if I wasn't laughing, if I weren't laughing. Yes.
Well, I wanted to ask, with the perspective of 6+ decades, maybe change things around 180 degrees, and looking forward, in your mind, is there one or two things possibly that baseball could change, add or subtract possibly, that would make it an even better game, improve the sport?
Yeah. What's today? What day of the week? What is today? Thursday? Saturday there'll be a release about Tal Smith, former general manager of the Houston Astros, asked me if I would join a committee, because he's had some concerns that our games are lasting too long, and that we lose fans after the 7th inning. They leave, and then they miss the 3-run rally that the home team does in the 9th inning, and they could be celebrating. So we're doing them an injustice by the game. So they want to change the pace of the game. So if any of you have any ideas on what's something we could do to help that, I've been making a lot of notes, and I'm anxious for the conference call that we'll have, and it will be done in the Atlantic League, which is an independent league. So we're not affecting to push it down the throat of anybody in the major leagues at this time, but we may learn something that would help. And I used to say, well, I don't mind the length of games, but I guess at my age now, sometimes I say, God, this game is dragging. I got to do something. So it'd be interesting. So if anybody here has any ideas, give me a note so I'll look smart again when I'm on that, when I'm on that conference call for the meeting this next Monday.
We've looked back on your career a lot. Would you spend a minute looking forward? The commissioner is retiring at the end of this season. Any thoughts on who the new commissioner might be?
Yeah, I have some that I think, I'm certainly not one, because at 84 years old, I don't want somebody for a couple of years. Dave Dombrowski might be one, very, very bright. Tony LaRussa could be one. Derek Hall, the president of our club, he's brilliant. He has great feel for fans and treat the people real well, fan-friendly. He has a lot of qualities. He makes a great appearance on television, which the commissioner of football is very presentable on television, right? He wins you over when he's talking to you. Bud Selig has done a tremendous job, but he doesn't have the razzmatazz or something that helps to, he would get more credit if, and he's a wonderful man. I knew him when he was a car salesman in Milwaukee. He never loaned me a car, but he loaned one to Eddie Matthews. Anyway, his father had an automobile agency, and that's when I first got to know him. And then he brought baseball back to Milwaukee, which was a feather in his cap and a great achievement. And he's done a lot of other things, interleague play, different factors of the game that he has done that other people would not have.
What's your view on instant replay?
It's going to take a little time to get adjusted, but I remember Marty Springted was a real good umpire, Nestor Shilak, and he said, we want to get it right. So they did everything possible, and there were umpires in that era where they couldn't run it all, so they didn't go towards the outfield to see if it's a trap play or not. Steve Palermo had the makings of a great umpire, and then he had a terrible accident with somebody shot him in a parking lot in Texas, accidentally, supposedly, but in any event, he kept himself in great shape. Now they have official trainers for the umpires, so they do the better job of getting in proper positions, and that used to be a reason that clubs would be upset because the umpire wasn't close enough to the calls because of their lack of agility. And so they're feeling their way. It takes a little bit of time, get the earphones on, and then talk to the people in New York who have all the different angles. But at least they get it right, and that's what the game should be. But it probably lacks some luster of popularity because it takes 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. But those are plays that Lou Piniella would have been throwing helmets and bats and everything else. And Earl Weaver, he used to make me mad because every time we played in Baltimore, it seemed that something came up and he'd be at the umpires. And when he made the Hall of Fame, I told him a couple of stories about how upset he made me. We had a play where Tony LaRussa had Kevin Bell's going to bunt for the first and second, and he fouled the ball off, and Weaver had Murray come way down the hitter's throat almost, and DeCences from third base, the third baseman. And then Tony changed it, and Bell hit a P to DeCences. DeCences, his life was passing him, like, he went, ha! Luckily, he hit his glove, and it just in front of him, instead of rolling away, he picks up the ball, throws to third base. Kiko Garcia was the shortstop that day, and Greg Pryor makes the usual slide, nothing out of the way. The force out is done. Pryor throws to first base to Murray, pulls him off the bat, and here comes Earl. He wants a double play like there was an interference on Pryor's fault on the ground ball, you know, on the slide was just a clean slide. So when he made the Hall of Fame, Earl, we're outside the Artisaga ballroom, and I told him, I had told him the year before that I thought he'd be in the Hall of Fame the year in which he was selected. And then I started telling the stories, and guys were listening to me. And Earl, with his cigarette, he starts choking, he's getting red, and he's laughing at me. He said, Roland's still angry, and all that stuff. I said, I better stop the story. You get in the hall today, you won't wake up in the morning. Anyway, but there were silly things that happened in Baltimore. But he antagonized, I think, the umpires, and they hated to see him come out because he was brilliant, and he used the tactic to the nth degree and got away with it on several occasions. Go ahead.
You've been around a lot of very famous Hall of Fame managers. What is a good manager worth? How many games? And what's a bad one? How many games can a bad one lose you, and how many games can a good one win for you?
Did you say a manager, what he plays? Well, first of all, if you have a real good ball club, he benefits. If he has a bad club, but then that's where the team and the officials should know that the manager did all he possibly could. We just didn't provide the proper talent. So it's an easy decision to just get rid of the manager, but I'm sympathetic to them. And sometimes I think some general managers then would start agreeing with the owner too soon to save themselves. And that used to bother me. So I would defend the managers greatly to simmer down that we're going to be all right, or, you know, the manager deserves that. And then when I went to Baltimore, we lost those. We were 21, 1-23 coming in, and then we had Frank Robinson. And the next year, we got some outfielders who caught balls on the fly: Brady Anderson, Joe Orsolak, Mike Devlo, and all of a sudden, Frank did a great job also, but we supplied the tools that we needed, some speed and catch some baseballs. So, but you should never feather your nest, so to speak. I always say, like Grady Little managed the Red Sox, and he stayed with Pedro Martinez in that last game of the World Series. And then Posada hit a soft liner, just like Luis Gonzalez did for us when we went against the Yankees. And I said, if he had hit a line drive and it was caught by the center fielder, Grady Little might still be manager of the Red Sox. I mean, he got abused, and he did the right thing. I know Whitey Herzog said he learned from some veteran managers. If you get as far as the World Series, stick with the guys who got you there, and don't fall for making over too many moves that defeat your purpose. So it's loyalty both sides, from the front office as well as those that are working on the field. And there's some years you're just not lucky. When you win the championship, you got some breaks. A lot of bloops fell in, or the ground ball just went through. It didn't turn out to be a double play. And then don't think that you're so darn smart. You're just lucky on a given year. And another year, you did all you possibly could, but it wasn't meant to be. Yes.
Injuries have played a greater role in the last few years in professional baseball, even college baseball. Why have there been so many more injuries?
It's mysterious, all the sore arms they could come up with and Tommy John surgery. Some people feel that, well, I know in cases of colleges, for instance, they'll overpitch a pitcher to win in Omaha. Regardless, that's where the coach is banking it on his own glory and success, possibly, as against not overwork a pitcher. I agonized over Ben McDonald. I thought he was going to be a great pitcher, but he got abused in college. And I figured it out that if he had been used in the major leagues at the same rate as he was handled there, he'd have pitched 440 innings in the season, 162 game schedule. I mean, that's mind-boggling. I shook hands with McDonald when we were getting him, and his major finger was swollen twice the size. So he probably too much split fingers and all that stuff. And I usually don't expose that, but you've got me asking questions, and that's why. And then they say even when we were children, we played on the playgrounds, we played a lot, but we didn't have to throw the ball as hard because you're just playing sides and everything else. Now, it's probably too much baseball activity. And they might be better sometimes if they're playing baseball, basketball, football. I don't really care for that because that's dangerous. But they would be better, well-rounded athletes and not just throwers. And then I hate the fact that when they started putting up the speed of the pitchers, I said, son of a gun, they shouldn't do that. Because now the guy who doesn't throw well, it's hard, but he's a winner, is getting abused by the fact that the other guy's throwing at 98 miles an hour, and he can get hitters out at 88 miles an hour. So Warren Spahn wasn't a fireball pitcher, but he was very intelligent. Spahn, he won 365 games in his career and missed 4 years in the service. And but he was cunning, smart. He fielded his position very well. Now I don't see pitchers. They used to call them fifth infielders, and that pitchers, Jim Cott, won 15 Gold Gloves. The last one he won with the White Sox. He said, I don't have any more room on my mantle. Roland, you can stick it here, keep in a White Sox office. But he helped himself. He stayed in the game because he made plays, and Greg Maddux the same way. He followed through beautifully. He was ready to field his position. They used to play pepper. Now they don't play pepper because the groundskeepers want the field to look so nice. You might remember way back, the players would be playing pepper, hitting towards the screen. It wouldn't hurt anybody if in case they lined the ball, it went over the screen, but it didn't happen. And they'd have fun doing it, but then they were in position to play. Spahn and Burdett loved it, and they helped themselves. So there are things that you make progress in the game, and then it gets eliminated sometimes for unreal reasons. Yes?
You get, speaking of Brady Anderson, steroids in the Hall of Fame, and Pete Rose.
Well, Brady, I can't say whether he did or not. But he had one big year, and then people paid the price of having a great year, hit 52 home runs. I know that Peter Angelos kind of liked him. And you know, I probably shouldn't tell the whole story. It would be an injustice. But he helped us win that year that he joined us and had a big year and all that. So players are suspect now when they have a year that appears far greater than, and that's not fair because maybe they had a good hitting coach, and Charlie Lau was a great hitting coach. He made hitters better than they thought they could be, and he would wait till they begged for help. One day he came in, he said, Roland, Carlton Fisk has looked for help. Carlton had been in Fenway Park and used that green monster to his ability, pulling. And then when he's doing it for us, then with the White Sox, then it's a different ballpark, harder to hit the ball out of the park and all that stuff. And we had signed Pudge for 5 years, Fisk, and he's hitting under 200. And Charlie comes to me, he says, Fisk is asking for help. He said, I'll tell you in 6 days whether he's all through or maybe he's going to be all right. Well, it turned out that Fisk listened very attentively, and we had Rudy Law who could fly, and Tony put Fisk batting second, and people saying, how the heck can he bat Fisk second? In Fenway Park, he was cleanup man or the fifth hitter or the third hitter. And, but it forced Fisk to drive the ball towards the right side as well and not pull. He ended up that year third in the balloting for MVP. And when we were 16 and 24, the Wolves were after Hemond and LaRussa. But then Charlie saved us by getting Fisk help. And Charlie had a great analytical mind too. He would tell the hitter, if a count gets 1-1, watch, he's going to throw the hard slider inside on you. And the hitters would, wow, this guy's a genius. And he was a hitting genius. And after we had Jerry Reinsdorf, because Tony had asked if we could possibly get Charlie to be our hitting coach. And I said, well, we better do it in a hurry because George Brett had gone on a tour with Major League All-Stars to Japan right after the postseason. I said, if George finds out, he's going to pay Charlie to stay with, with the club that he was with. And some people said, well, he was working with George Brett. Well, George Brett was having trouble staying in the big leagues until he listened to Charlie and became a Hall of Famer. So you love to meet people like that. Johnny Sain, great pitching coach. And when he was very ill, and I'd go see him in a hospital in Chicago, he said, Roland, did I ever tell you when I really learned to pitch? No, you never told me, John. He said, well, when I was a Navy pilot, I had to concentrate on the instruments, and then with my colleagues in their formation, 3 other planes, so that we don't crash into one another. He said, you really have to be attentive. So he said, when I came out of the service, he said, it didn't bother me if the umpire missed a call or somebody booted the ball behind me because I had so much focus. I said, we're going to have to send all of our pitchers to Annapolis to learn to fly the planes. Yeah, so I relish talking about people that I love and made me look a heck of a lot smarter than I am because they carried you, you get carried. So that's why I said I'm very lucky. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the power of the game started after the '94 strike, and attendance started going up, but power numbers were not even close to what they were before. My question is, when this started happening and steroids kind of started in the background being talked about, what were the owners thinking? I mean, did they have anything, or did they even care? What was the thought process?
When Sosa and McGuire were going hot, they certainly put a lot of fans in the stands. And what happened also, that's when it started to be that you had conditioning coaches. In the old days, the clubhouse guy, they worked in the clubhouse as a trainer, didn't have all the education of the things that transpired. And clubs didn't want players to lift weights during the off season because they'd come back stiff, and a good throwing shortstop all of a sudden shorthanding the ball, or they lost their elasticity. And so then when the conditioning coaches came on, we figured, boy, that's good that they know how to keep the fella flexible as well. So I think we got fooled along the way that the conditioning program was getting better, but we didn't know about the additional stuff. So it's sad because some of those guys, Barry Bonds was a great looking player in Pittsburgh, and he would have gone to the Hall of Fame. So instead of having 600 plus home runs, he might have had 550. So they made mistakes themselves. And it was tempting for players who did not take steroids, because guy'd be coming up from the minors to the majors, and they all knew in the clubhouse that he was getting an unfair advantage, and they were staying in AAA or AA, and it was tempting for them. So I don't know. I had to weigh 115 to get in the Coast Guard. If they had steroids, I'd have made it sooner. I threw my glove in the closet on my last high school game, and I said to my mother, I went from 122 pounds on the basketball team, and by the end of the baseball season, I weighed 110. So then I had to put at least 5 pounds to get into the Coast Guard. So I was having banana splits all summer, and finally, I go to the Coast Guard station. A friend of mine had joined 2 weeks before. He said, Roland, I can't wait for you any longer. And a cousin of mine went up with me, and he was acting cocky with a cigar. They pushed him down. They said he was a ½ inch too short, and I made it by ½ a pound. And then when I got to Mayport, Florida, early August, my buddy had touted me that I could play a little. So they said, Roland Hemond, Seaman Apprentice #1. Seaman Apprentice, please report to Diamond #1. I said, oh, good, I'm glad I brought my glove. So they hit me about 15 ground balls. They said they're on the team. So we spent in Mayport, Florida in August, pretty hot and humid. So it wasn't long that I was weighing 108 again. But I was in, so they couldn't kick me out. I don't like to talk about myself, but I laugh at myself, so that's okay. Yes, sir.
What is the best trade you've never made?
Best trade I never made? Yeah. I came very close to trading Wilbur Wood to the Washington Senators. Wood was being just used in a bullpen by the previous regime with the White Sox. And Darrell knows that, I think in the World Series, he might have pitched in all 7 games or 5 out of the 7 games. You could look it up. Casey Stengel said you could look it up. Now I say the same thing because I know all these whiz-bang guys with the computers. I better tell the story straight, otherwise they'll find me out. But in any event, the trade, well, actually it wasn't a trade necessarily. I had seen Jim Cott pitching in Minnesota when we made a trip there. Well, not close to mid-season, but sometime. And we were out of the race, but I claimed them. And I had also read that Phil Roof, who I knew very well, a good catcher, had said that Cott still has a lot in him. So we go to a meeting in Milwaukee, the owners' meeting, and they didn't have cell phones. I couldn't reach Johnny Sain, the pitcher I'm talking about.
Jim Cott. Jim Cott.
Oh, Jim Cott, yeah. I'm wandering a little bit here. And I couldn't find Chuck Tanner. He wasn't at the hotel. Johnny wasn't there either. And then I claimed him anyway. And John Allen, our owner, said, well, why'd you claim him? We're out of the race. I said, John, I think he can still pitch. I saw him earlier in the season, and I have indication that he knows how to pitch and will be all right. He said, well, where are we going to get the $20,000? Geez, I figured I'm going to have to make a donation to the White Sox for the price of the pitcher. Maybe I didn't like him as much then, if that would have been the case. But anyway, Cott came. He was 4-1 the rest of the season. He really didn't want to come to Chicago. He had a right not to accept the assignment. His wife, he says, is crying. The kids are all upset. And he lived in Minnesota. And then finally, John Allen says, well, see, I told you he must be a bad guy. I said, the reason he didn't like Calvin Griffith, he said, is because when Johnny Sain helped Cott win 25 games, Griffith wouldn't give Johnny Sain a raise. So Johnny Sain went to Detroit, and Lolich became a better pitcher than those guys. So I made my... So then all of a sudden the phone rings again, and the agent, and then he's got Cott. I said to John Allen, you can talk to him too. So he talks to him, and he comes back and says, yeah, he seemed like a nice guy at that, Roland. So anyway, then Cott called me back. I said, Jim, we can use a pitcher Friday night in Baltimore. Chuck needs a pitcher. He said, oh, I can't do that. He said, I see we have an open day on Monday. I'll be with my family on Monday. So I come back and said to John Allen, I said, well, he'll be here next Monday. He said, see, I told you he's a bad guy. So I couldn't win, you know. And then when he started pitching with the homestand, he's 4-1 the rest of the year. But then he starts the next season a little slow, and Harry Carey saying, last year they brought Eddie Fisher here. We had to look at Fisher. Now it looks like we're going to have to look at Cott. I could have punched him out. And then he wins 20, and then he wins 21. And at the end of the season, Cott went to Harry. He says, Harry, you tried to drive me out of town. He said, oh, you know how it is, Jim. Well, when he wasn't right, he tried to make it right on the wrong. So Harry wasn't one of my favorites, let's put it that way.
Tell about how his prediction that LaRussa would be a good manager.
Yeah. Then we brought Tony LaRussa as manager, and I had told Bill Veeck that he should get to know Tony. And I had the flu. This was in January, and Bill would send chicken noodle soup to me about every 4 hours to get me well. And he said, we're going to open the season, spring training. We're going to open spring training on March 1st. I said, what are you talking about? Going to fight the union? He said, no, give me 25 players from the farm system. And we were the only club in Florida when they'd open on March 1st. And the writers wrote us up real good because they had nothing else to write. But we don't play them ahead of time. And I told him, I said, Bill, I put Tony LaRussa as a middle infielder. I said, you should meet this young man. Lauren Babe, who had been manager on the AAA club where Tony was, said, Roland, Lauren had health problems, so he would sit in the dugout sometimes and tell Tony, you run the team today. And he said, boy, he's got a good mind for the game. So I told Bill that he should try to meet him when we went to spring training. So he called him over 2 afternoons, about an hour or so. He says, oh yeah, this special young man. So Harry was knocking Tony, but we could see how well organized he was, how disciplined. As a matter of fact, he went to college, 12 years off-season studies. He lived in Tampa and would go to Florida State to be a lawyer. So that took great discipline. Most people would never go through that torture or method. Now, I've been helping a lot of players to take their degrees online with the University of Phoenix. Our young first baseman, Paul Goldschmidt, he's something special. And he got his degree last year. He finished his classes after having 3 years at Texas State. And he'd bring his computer in the clubhouse before the other players were there, do his work, and then when the players showed up, then he'd get into uniform and play the game. So, and then the other day I had a young pitcher, Chase Anderson, we just brought up recently, and he thanked me because I roamed around the minor league training camps to encourage players to get their education. I only had high school, so I knew that I could have done better in baseball if I had a college education. So I said to Anderson, I said, gee, by the way, he thanked me. He says, I only need 2 more semesters. Terrific, nice going. I said, we already named the ballpark after you, Chase Anderson. He laughed. But that's been one of the big rewards for me of late, to see these guys from all clubs applying themselves for a future. And too many times I saw players when they're waning days of their careers, what do I do now? And they're very attractive to the corporate world. It doesn't have to be the baseball world, because the big officials of the corporate world recognize that a player had to be disciplined, aggressive, team man to be in the big leagues for any length of time. So they're hiring a former player with a lot of the credentials that you would look and find if you were hiring somebody. Okay.
One more question. We got time for one more.
That's all?
One more question.
Okay. Don't do that.
Not forever.
Okay, I could go on now forever. That's okay.
Well, you talk about the going forward with some improvements to the game, and obviously I think it becomes more and more apparent it's like a 6 or 7 inning game, and turn it over the bullpen, you get all these substitutions and all. You're an old school guy. What do you think about all this emphasis on sabermetrics and all the mathematical probabilities and all that kind of stuff when you probably came up as a scout?
Yeah. It's okay to a point. But what I find, some of these guys that are sold as sabermetricians, they don't have the people skills, and then they think they're smarter than everybody else. I know Tony LaRussa was on the air some time ago. He said he'd like to have the other clubs in the division all doing analyticals and play that way, and he thinks he'd win out in the long run. And yet Tony will listen, and has probably used it to some extent. But what bothered me when it took place, 103 scouts were fired that off season when Moneyball publicity came out. So many of the owners, they're not necessarily people smart, but they have made big money with buildings or whatever, whatever it might be, the businesses they're in, and they're analytical. But in baseball, you're with the human being, and the manager, they'll say, how can he pinch hit with this guy? He's only 1 for 12. But he had 5 line drives that were caught. So if they're not caught, he's hitting 500 instead of 100 something. So you have to balance to some extent. And yet, I pay a little attention to it now because it's a matter of fact. But when they let 103 scouts go that winter after the Moneyball, then we were at a meeting, and Dennis Gilbert has been an agent and works for the White Sox because he was a good negotiator. And a fellow by the name of Dave Yoakum, White Sox scout, says, it breaks my heart to see my friends losing their jobs left and right. And then Dennis said, I'm going to start a foundation to help scouts who lose their jobs. And he's put on a remarkable dinner the last few years, 10 years now, in Los Angeles area. And it's the best baseball banquet that you could ever attend. And we've been able to help people in need who were falsely let go after their dedication for years and years. And then I know when we had a lockout one time, and I just joined the White Sox, I mean, one of the most trying moments is that because of the strike, I was told we have to take the scouts off the road or let some go. And it made a profound damage to my enthusiasm. And the farm director, Glenn Miller, and his assistant, C.V. Davis, they said they just can't call Hollis Thurston and Doc Bennett on the West Coast, who had helped the club to, as well as they could with good players. I said, well, I'll make the calls, and I'm new on the job, but I was torn, but I knew that those fellas couldn't handle it. And but later on, when I don't want to go into too much detail, but we ended up getting a pension for employees. And it had taken forever for ball clubs to have pensions for the employees. So because I made a speech at an owners meeting, and I said, it's really a crying shame that we let people go who have spent 30, 35 years for an organization. And I said, they can't afford an automobile, so you don't see them again, they don't come to the ballpark. They don't invite you to their homes because they're dying in poverty. And it was the first time, they said in the history of baseball, that they passed a pension plan on that one session. The Dodgers were good to their people. If they let them go, they had a deferred compensation or a bonus for them. The Red Sox, they didn't let any scouts go till they died. But the others, or most of them, it was year-to-year basis. So thanks to Dennis Gilbert, too, that we're helping others that have problems. Okay. I'll add one more.
Thank you. Yes.
I'll take one more. I don't know if you've heard of the Arizona Fall League. That's a league where each club sends 7 of their best prospects to that league. And I'm the one who started that league. And I'd made a speech to the general managers meeting, and Al Rosen, the first time, only the one to back me up. He was general manager of the Giants. Then the next winter, Wayne Granger, who had pitched for the Cardinals, asked to speak to the general managers, and he said he had some investors who would put a fall league complex, so to speak, in the fall in Florida. And I had said that we'd be better to have it in Arizona because in Florida in the fall you get a lot of rain and hurricanes and what have you. In Arizona it's perfect weather. And then we started that league. And opening day this past season, 53% of the players in the active rosters played in the fall league. So if you're a baseball enthusiast and you go to see the fall league, you can scout yourself and write down who you think might be Rookie of the Year or who might be an all-star in the future. And it's one of the best achievements in my career. It's been very rewarding. And now I have pushed for a junior fall league, rookie league players, late signings, and Class A players. I haven't been successful yet, but I hang in there. And that could be that we would be advancing players to the majors maybe a year or two sooner, because when you play in the fall league, you're seeing better pitching than you saw in the minor leagues. And if you're a pitcher, you get the easy outs with the guys that are going to get released. Or in the fall league, they have to elevate their game to compete. So it's like a pre-major league opportunity. So watch it closely, and it's a great place for vacation. We have a tremendous training camp at Salt River Fields. When I broke in with the Braves, we trained in Waycross, Georgia, and we had the players in barracks from old buildings from the war. And I was worried because they had gas heaters, and I said, suppose it blows out, but it's still giving you the fumes. We might lose some players. Somebody would get, in deep trouble. They said, don't worry, Roland. There are so many cracks in these buildings. We've got great ventilation. So the game has come a long way. Thank you very much. You're a great audience.
Thank you again. We do have, stay right here, true legend here. Thank you again for coming in. You're quite a trooper. You flew in last night, late last night, got in early this morning here, interviewed with the Chicago baseball guys pretty much all morning, all day, stopped for lunch, took a quick nap on the couch out there.
I lead the league in naps. That's why I'm
Yes.
around so long. In Chicago, they'd say, where's Roland? One time I'm sleeping in the dugout, and they turn on the sprinklers, I almost drowned. And then another time I'm hiding in a bullpen, and then they press the horn like batting practice is going to start, and it was, so, they'd wake me up. Said, but I've fooled them in Diamondbacks, they haven't found me out yet. I go in Kevin Towers, our general manager, he's got a nice suite up there, a private box, and I have the key to it, so I sneak naps, and he leaves me a pillow. He encourages me to do it. So anyway, so you got to have fun. And
Thank you again.
Okay,
we do have
thank
a trivia question as usual. So first hand I see will be the one I pick here. So in 1957, Roland Hemond won his first World Series ring with the Milwaukee Braves. What was his position on the team? Crickets. Like Miller. No, nothing? You're usually, boom, you're right there.
Director of scouting.
what position I
What
was?
position did you hold?
Assistant farm director and assistant scouting director. No, John Mullen was, and then one day I walk in and he said, John McHale had become the general manager, and he was taking the title of scouting director away from John. No, he kept him as farm director, but not scouting director. I said to John, I said, I wonder if he considered me now. I've been here about 10 years, and we had the best farm system in baseball at the time. And he said, I don't think so. I said, I'm going to give him a call. I was going to see my parents for Thanksgiving. I said, John, did you ever give me any consideration? He says, oh, you're too young to be a scouting director. I said, well, I've been here 10 years. I know the scouts' weaknesses and strengths. And he said, well, and I said, by the way, you were general manager of the Tigers at the age of 33. Well, he had pretty good credentials. He had graduated from Notre Dame University, and he played a little first base for a short period of time. And he married the owner's daughter. I had married, at that time, let's see, was I married? I married the general manager's daughter, except he left 6 weeks later to become general manager of the Phillies, so I'd made a bad move, right? Anyway, 6 weeks later, Fred Haney calls me. They're putting the expansion club, Angels, and he hired me to be the farm and scouting director of the Angels. So boy, did I mature in 6 weeks, right? Right place, right time, good breaks. Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Hemond, if you wouldn't mind, we do have a drawing.
Oh, yeah.
We'll take your answer there. And this is for a golf polo. So we've got John Mongaluzzo. I know
going,
I saw
John?
you in here earlier. John,
here?
is John here? Must be present. He was.
Should we
Well,
hold
let
it
him
for him?
know.
Though? You're going to let him know he won something?
Well, you've got to be present to win.
Oh, gee. Well, that's why I always say you should never leave till the last out of a ball game because you might miss something.
That's right.
And I hate when I see scouts that leave before the game's over. You know, one scout would leave early habitually. They asked him about Trevor Hoffman. He says, I never saw him. But that, yeah, so when I was, yeah, then he leaves, you know, baseball and saves. So, so now people, they're hesitant when I sit down with the scouts. You might see me sometimes in the second row on TV, and they kind of slip out hoping I didn't see them, because I used to say, I'm not going to hire a scout who leaves before the game's done. And also, it might go extra innings, 15 innings. What do you report on that day? So they self-inflict their wounds, right? No pity for them. Okay.
Pick another one. Joe, pick another name.
Okay.
Mike Bro. I know Mike's here. There's
Nice going, Mike.
right there.
Way to go.
Congratulations, Mike.
See?
And
I'm glad you stayed for the final out. Yeah. I guess you have to claim it.
all right, thanks. Let's stick around for a short bit if anyone would like to get their picture taken.
Yeah.
If anyone would like to sign up for the Reds Hall of Fame Gala, let myself or Rocky know. Other than that, thanks again. We'll see hopefully all of you July 15th for the All-Star Game.